Tell me if this sounds familiar. You started out the talented kid, playing music instead of doing all your homework, skipping the parties to work on producing, writing, recording, performing, really living and breathing music. And then fast forward to now. It's resolution season. You're 20-something, maybe 30-something, a little burnt out, a little bit sick of music, and frankly, you're tired of making goals like finally drop new music, produce more artists in 2020, whatever, and practice 10 hours a week for the 5th year in a row. Somewhere along the way, the flame of passion has turned into a crockpot of obligation, and your musical output has gone from 5 songs a month to a bunch of 8-bar loops and voice memos. How do we get back to the old you, the one who had to make music, the one who couldn't stop producing? And if you can relate, then strap in, because this may not be easy, but it might be the most important thing you do all year, and that is unfucking your music career. So get out your notebooks, grab a pen, and let's get to work. And sorry, Mom, for cursing, by the way. If you're watching, I needed a cool title, so my bad. If you're not familiar with the snowball method, it's basically a way of tackling your problems by solving the smallest ones first to gain momentum, to build some confidence, and then when you get to the big problems, you're in a better position to tackle them head on. With that said, if this step feels trivial to you, don't worry, because there's some more coming that will be much more of a struggle. And step 1 of unfucking your music career is that first snowball. This one's pretty easy, but I want you to take it seriously. And that is falling back in love with what got you into being creative in the first place. So whether it's that first CD that you bought with your own money, or the songs you wrote when you were a kid, or that shelf full of vinyl that's been collecting dust, I want you to start by exploring what it is that made you fall in love with making music. If you're taking notes, then start by writing down the albums, movies, shows, and whatever else it is that inspired you. And then start a second list of things that you've been meaning to watch, things you've been putting off listening to. You know, like if you've never listened to Sgt. Pepper's from start to finish, or you've been meaning to watch that Quincy Jones documentary on Netflix, put it on the list. Maybe it's something else totally out there, like going on a hike or picking up sketching again. Whatever it is, just put it on the list. And why are we doing this? Well, if you can't remember the last time that a song moved you to happy tears or sad tears, or the last time you heard a song so good that you just had to go home and write your own, or the last time that you felt inspired to create something truly great, from maybe a painting, a sunset, whatever it is, well, then it's no wonder that your well will be dry when it comes time to write or produce some of your own tunes. I know it might sound stupid to write these down, but writing things down is a huge marker of intention. And if you won't even commit to writing something down, then I believe you're even less likely to actually do it. But when you're not sure what to do with a few free hours, pulling out this list and checking something off sure beats scrolling through Reels for an hour and a half. So there is that. And that leads us to step number 2 of this journey. This is the next snowball, but it's still in the easy column. You're going to learn to enjoy the silence, which sounds simple, but there's more to it. So when it comes to our brains, there are 3 modes that you can enter. There's output, input, and processing. When you're working on writing a song, or you're programming synths, or you're playing a gig, well, that's output. If you're watching a production tutorial, or listening to a podcast about the music business, or even listening to music that inspires you, that's input. But one piece of this pie chart that has been steadily shrinking is the processing slice. In a perfect world, you spend about a third of your time doing each. But I've noticed in myself and many others that the input slice has been crowding out the other 2 to a concerning degree. There's a reason that you have your best ideas in the shower, or in the moments right before you fall asleep, or right before you open your eyes and start the day. For a lot of us, those are the only 3 times we give our brains actual time to process all of the inputs that we've given it. So while it's great that you can learn how to use sidechain compression from a video while doing the dishes, or you can get a crash course on the music business from a podcast while you're driving, I think it's high time that we start to let the processing slice take back over. If you need some ideas on how to do this, I've got plenty. You could stop listening to something while you're driving, and if you're on a short drive, just sit there and think. Leave your AirPods at home while you're doing errands or going to the gym. If you've got a flight coming up, don't download anything to help pass the time, don't buy the Wi-Fi, and bring a notebook and some earplugs instead of noise-canceling headphones and a tablet. Try to get used to falling asleep without the TV on, or have your smart speaker play rainforest sounds instead. Give your brain more opportunities to actually process the inputs and then come up with ideas organically. And then you can use those ideas when it's time to sit down and write or produce. If you can cut your inputs by 15 or 20% and let processing take that part of the pie back, you'll be shocked at how many more amazing ideas you have to get started with when it's time for an output phase. So in your notebook, let's not write anything about enjoying the silence. Instead, we'll have a big space where we can write all of our ideas that we're actually letting our brains think up. I told you these would get harder, and this one is a little bit like ripping off a Band-Aid. The next thing we're gonna do is get actively unaddicted to as much stuff as possible. And for 90% of us, that's going to be cell phones. If you're a little bit embarrassed to share your screen time graph, I promise you it is also having an effect on your creative process too. So I recently watched the Metallica documentary, Some Kind of Monster, which was filmed from 2001 to 2003, before smartphones and iPads and all that. And I pretty instantly noticed that everyone was in this zone for the entire recording process, besides Kirk reading a guitar magazine every once in a while. And they even actually made fun of him a little bit for reading during the sessions at one point, which is a huge contrast from the tons of sessions I've done where the band members finish playing their parts and then they play on their phones the rest of the session instead. So around 6 months ago, I realized that I was looking at my phone every single time I had an idle moment. 10 seconds in line at the grocery store, check Instagram. Waiting for an appointment, doom scroll on Facebook. And the thing is, that starts to spill into your process for everything else. Waiting for a track to import into Melodyne? Phone. Can't think of a lyric? Phone. Pull up the Notes app, but oops, I've got 15 unread emails and one of them might be important. Oh, and I have to sit here and actually work on this song, even the boring parts, without playing on my phone? Yeah, that's gonna be a little uncomfortable. So what are we gonna do to fix this? Well, first, if the phone is your problem, then you need to make that thing as ugly as humanly possible. Make the screen black and white, turn the font up to the biggest possible setting, make your wallpaper something stupid like put this down. Basically, just make the thing an anti-dopamine machine. Get rid of the pretty colors and you'll realize just how often you use the thing. If you stick to this, I bet you'll cut your screen time in half without even trying. I've recently gotten to the point where I actually don't always have to have my phone on me. And that's actually made a big difference in the studio, because when you're addicted to your phone and you leave it in the other room while you're writing or producing so you can focus, you have this weird feeling like you're missing something. But if you're unaddicted, then leaving your phone behind makes total sense, because what do you need it for anyway? And if it's not your phone, I'm sure it's something else. So do a little thinking, figure out what you're doing instead of letting yourself get in the flow of working on music, and then write down your method of getting unhooked to it. Okay, this one is kind of hard, but hear me out. Over the last however long you've been doing this, you've probably learned a lot, and your instincts have probably gotten a lot better. You know what makes a song great, and you know what you need to do to make a song that doesn't totally suck. And that's awesome. It's hard work, and you should be proud of yourself for doing it. But at the same time, I found that a lot of producers and songwriters, well, as their skill level goes up, the productivity and even their willingness to take creative risks, well, that tends to go down. It's not rare for someone to show me a giant playlist of demos with great hooks or really cool tracks, but not a lot of finished songs. And I would put myself in that category sometimes too. So when I was a teenager, I finished like just about every single song that I started, even if some parts made me cringe a little. I'd eventually come back to them, do a little editing, polish up the dull parts, meaning it was rare for me to have half-finished songs just sitting around for months. Something I am really trying to push myself to do again, and others too, is to finish just about every song that you start before you go on to the next one. If you've got 15 sessions with demos in them, make the call. Either finish it or archive it on your backup drive. Don't let yourself start a new song until you've worked your way through the ones that you have in progress. And I mean it. This step is a pretty big snowball, but I recently went from around 35 unfinished demos down to just the 7 or 8 that I actually want to finish and actually think I'll finish writing. And that's been a nice weight off of my shoulders. So what are we doing about this? Ultimately, it's up to you to decide how you want to let yourself suck more. But for me, I'm going to make it a goal to finish more of my songs, even if they stink, and then move on to the next one. Maybe a week later, I'll come back to it and realize it wasn't so bad after all. Or maybe I'll throw the whole thing in the trash. But either way, at least I'll know. One thing that I think all of us have lost over the last few years is working with people in person. I spent the first few years of my music career in a 4-piece band, and we always wrote together, jammed, and rehearsed every week, and we made tons of music. But we also made a lot of great memories and built long-lasting friendships. And as I've grown as a songwriter and producer, I learned more instruments, figured out more ways to record just about everything myself, and if I needed to, I could write, produce, record, mix, and master my own songs. But making yourself do all the heavy lifting all the time, well, that's heavy. But there's also a dose of ego that we let tell us who we will and won't work with, what we can and can't do. And a lot of times that basically just boils down to, I could do that myself. So if you're feeling the weight of carrying every song across the finish line yourself, this is a great time to drop the ego, get your texting fingers going, and set up some sessions with people around you, or even on Zoom. I've said it before on this channel, and I fully believe it, but songs are a renewable resource, and you're better off writing more than you are hoarding all the ideas and keeping them for yourself. When a co-write is really flowing, both of the writers feel like they only did a third of the work because the whole is better than the sum of its parts. So enlist some help and start making more stuff with more people again. This one is a big mental hurdle for so many people to get over. Thinking too much about the audience when creating. There are times where the thoughts of, will people like this, will fill your mind. And there is a time and place for those questions, but the time is not while you're actively creating. So my best approximation of this rule is this: finish the song, then wonder if your audience will think it's good. Or if you have an idea that you think people will like, then come up with a song around the idea. So you can finish or start the song thinking about the audience, but in the middle, when you're actually writing and recording, let your own instincts guide you and forget about the audience. There's nothing wrong with trying to put out music that your audience will enjoy or with the goal of having commercial success in music. But if you dwell on it to the point that you let it influence all your creative decisions, you're just putting a limit on your own creativity. And even outside of the actual creative process, there are other times when it's important to ignore the audience as well. One thing that's never healthy is obsessing over streaming analytics or how many tickets someone else is selling. So when it's time to talk business, talk business. But when it's time to think about the art, or when you're just living your everyday life, try to not focus too much on what your audience thinks. If you can separate your personal, individual happiness from the results of your art business's metrics, you are going to end up a whole lot happier. I can promise you that 1 million streams or producing a song that hits the viral charts isn't going to make you happy forever. And even if you hit the peak, you can't stay there forever. This is one dang hard snowball to push up the hill, but trust me, it's worth it. So last but not least, you are going to put yourself on a schedule. This one is the hardest snowball of them all because it really makes you put everything into practice. So for example, in 2019, I challenged myself to release a new single every single month for the entire year, and it went really well. And while I won't be doing that exact same challenge again this year, I am going to get my notebook filled with deadlines and goals for each week, month, or quarter. Making goals for yourself on those more short-term timelines is a great way to keep yourself accountable. And if you can get into a rhythm of constantly performing, producing, writing, releasing songs, whatever it is that you want to do, and you hit your goal by the end of this year, just keep it rolling and let it keep being a part of your routine, or even just bump it up slightly. And when I say schedule, I mean schedule, as in things that you can do on specific timetables. That doesn't mean that I want you to set numeric goals to hit by a certain month, like work with 5 new artists by April. Instead, schedule yourself time to reach out to 10 potential artists that you could work with every single week. Hitting your goals is a product of repeatedly doing actions that build towards the goal. So if you stick to your schedule, the results and the progress will follow. So tell me, what are your goals for this year? What are you planning on doing every week, every month, every quarter to have a happy and productive year? What are you going to do to go get inspired again? What are you going to do to unfuck your music career? Sound off in the comments, because I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone is working towards. And if you're looking for the best way to turn your fresh new ideas into the best music of your career, then check out this video right here next.